If you'd care to follow along with our first song, you'll find it in your Siddur on page 128, Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh Avarachaman, Yedid Nefesh Avarachaman, Meshoch Avdecha. Yedid Nefesh has really beautiful poetry. If you take a look, heart's delight, source of mercy, draw your servant into your arms. I leap like a deer to stand in awe before you. It's a wonderful way to bring in Shabbat with some beautiful poetry and song. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's good to be here with you all. We're going to welcome in Shabbat by lighting the Shabbat candles. So I want to invite Heather and Arthur Ross to come down to light the candles. And if you would please grab the microphone, and you can feel free to engage with one of our readings on page 121 of the Siddur. So if you'd like to do one of the readings, go ahead and grab the microphone down there and choose one of our readings on page 121. Make sure the mic is on. Yeah. Is it on? Doesn't look like it's... Well, the stream won't be able to. Do we have a different mic? We're getting a different microphone for you. We're getting you another mic. One moment, Heather. Okay. People on the stream can't hear you, but people here might be able to.
Thanks, Jack.
Is this on now?
Yes.
Okay. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Beautiful, thank you. And if you'll all join me, we'll make the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvot mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlikne shel Shabbat. Thank you. We have a tradition here at TSG of welcoming Shabbat with our family blessing, an English interpretation of the priestly benediction. Those of you who are here in person, if you want to hold your families close or come in together, and those of you at home, if you want to bring your families in together and join us for the family blessing. May God bless you and keep you. May He shine His face upon you and grace you. May He lift His presence unto you and grant you peace. May God bless you and keep you. May she shine her face upon you and grace you. May she lift her presence unto you and grant you peace. And grant you peace. Shabbat shalom, everyone. As we continue to welcome in Shabbat, please join me in a reading on page 124. May the door of the synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. Of course, we have the practice of welcoming in Shabbat as a bride with Lecha Dodi, which you will find on pages 138 and 139. We're using a melody a lot of you may know. It's an original composition for Lecha Dodi, but if you don't know it, you'll catch on pretty quickly, and please join me. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. We'll do that again. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'nibur echad, Hishmianu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'lithilah. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Shabbat lechu v'necha, ki hi mekor ha-beracha, meirosh mikeren hasucha, sof ma'aseh b'machashava techila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. You'll all please take a moment to rise and turn towards the doorways to greet the Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvtzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Please remain standing for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Yitkada v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala, ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח, יתפאר ויתרומם, יתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma ve'imeru. Amen. And please remain standing for the Baruch Hu on page 146. We have a beautiful tradition for the nighttime to say a blessing over the nighttime sky. Every evening you have this opportunity. We're going to do that with a song and prayer called Roll Into Dark. It includes the Hebrew with the beautiful imagery of light rolling into dark, dark rolling into light. And it has the English as well. You'll see an insert, those of you who are here in person, But if you're watching on the stream, the words are roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. And the rest of it is, the rest of the Hebrew you can also find on page 148 in your Siddur, if you're so inclined. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, light becomes day, day turns to night. We now come to the watchword of our people, the Shema, which you'll find on page 152 to 153. We have a custom at TSG to rise for the Shema. So if you're so inclined, please feel free to do so. Please feel free to rise and join me on the Shema. Please be seated. We're found on page 154 for the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Please join me now on page 157 for a reading, Standing on the Parted Shores. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Please join me on page 158 for the Micha Mocha. Yalla la la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, micha mocha Vedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele. Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you? Shabbat Shalom. As you may have noticed, our rabbi is still out on vacation, so I'm pulling double duty here tonight, again, just as last week, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit about this week's parasha. Now, we've finally come to a new book, the book of, does anybody want to guess? I think I may have heard it. Anyone? Louder? What book are we in now? It's a new book. Deuteronomy. Very good, Maggie. Thank you. Deuteronomy, also known in Hebrew as Devarim. And many of you may know that Judaism places a lot of value in a name. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this name and what it indicates for us. So I'm going to come back to the Hebrew name in a little bit, but I want to talk to you about the name Deuteronomy. Now, it's a strange word many of us are familiar with, but we may not necessarily know exactly linguistically what it breaks down to, what it means. Now, the word Deuteronomy has two parts, deutero and nomi, and Deuteronomy basically means second distribution. So if you know a little bit about what is happening in this story, in this book, right from the beginning, it makes a lot of sense because the fifth book of the Torah, the final book, has a lot of repetition in it. We see the story is being repeated, the story of a lot of the laws and the wanderings that our ancestors took in those 40 years in the desert is being repeated. You might ask yourself, why? Why would we bother having a whole book dedicated to a repetition? And there are a lot of different reasons you could think of as to why we have this repetition, why we have this second distribution. First of all, many of you may be aware of how the brain works, and repetition is basically necessary in order for us to really retain anything that we've learned. Very few of us are so lucky as to be able to learn something the very first time that we encounter it. Most of us need repetition, which is why I also want to tell you a little bit about what I do with my students when they're preparing for their bar and bat mitzvah. So I always tell them it's actually quantity over quality in this case. So it's really how frequently you're practicing rather than, I spent 2 hours one day in the week. That's great, but that's not necessarily going to get you to mastering the materials. Because if you were to spend 15 minutes every day on the same materials, even though it doesn't add up to the same amount of time, it's actually much more effective for them to be able to learn it. And the reason is because while we may not understand a lot of things still about the brain, we do know that our brains at night, when we sleep, when we dream, are working overtime to transfer our short-term memories into our long-term memories, which is why some of you may recall in days of school cramming for that test, staying up all night studying and not retaining much of what you'd studied all night. And that's because the sleep is important. It's necessary in order for you to really store that knowledge into your long term. So you would do better, instead of staying up all night cramming, you'd do better to just get a good night's sleep, which I think is the case for most of us. We all could really use a good night's sleep. But it's that repetition that really helps us to learn something. Now, something else to keep in mind is the fact that the people that Moses is addressing here, right towards the very end of his life, towards the end of those 40 years in the desert, aren't the same people who he would have addressed, who he started this journey with. If you're following the story, you know that almost none of the people who started off on that journey, escaping from slavery in Egypt, actually made it into the land. And there's a few reasons given as to why that's the case. Most notably, in Parashat Shalach, when the 12 spies are sent and 10 of them come back giving false negative reports, and only 2 of them gave positive reports on the land, the promised land, and the whole congregation stayed up all night weeping. There's actually a connection between this parasha and our upcoming holiday, which starts tomorrow evening, of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is a very sad occasion, but you'll learn more about that if you attend tomorrow's service. Now, we don't have the same people who were there from the beginning. So it's a new generation. These are people who are learning secondhand, third-hand stories from their parents, from their grandparents, of what exactly happened. While their souls may have been there at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, their actual physical bodies were not, except for the 2 spies who gave positive reports, Caleb and Joshua. But everybody else, they're all new, and they need maybe to hear this story of what happened to their parents, to their grandparents who were slaves in Egypt and escaped and received these laws. So they need to hear it anew. Something else to keep in mind about repetition is that sometimes the second time around it's a little bit different, right? Has anybody ever experienced losing a very important document that you were working really hard on and you just can't recover it? I think it's familiar, for a very familiar situation for a lot of us. Now, sometimes it may happen that you, while it's very difficult to start the work over again, maybe you find a different track, a different way to go about writing, and you find something entirely new to reveal through your writing. And there are indeed a few new things that happen in the book of Deuteronomy. And the book of Deuteronomy is actually really important because we get a lot of our source material for one of our most central prayers that we pray, and that is the Shema, the Ve'ahavta. The words from the Shema, they come from this book, from the book of Deuteronomy. So clearly there's something new that can be revealed in the course of that repetition. Now I want to come back for a moment to the Hebrew name of this parasha, which is Devarim. Now the word Devarim in Hebrew means words, but it also means things. And if you look at the way words and things are dealt with Jewishly, if you look from the very beginning of the Torah, the world came into being through spoken word, let there be light. There is intense creative power in words. And words are very real things. They are not just concepts, they're not just the things that were spoken in a moment. They can stay with you for a very, very long time. We all know words can hurt, and they can also lift people's spirits. Words are things, they truly are. So, in this case, the words are things because they are transmitting the tradition. Coming back for a moment to the fact that this weekend we have a holiday, Tisha B'Av, some people refer to this Shabbat as Shabbat Chazon, which means, Chazon actually has to do with the name of my position, the Chazan, with visionary, right? So we're supposed to imagine a third temple, if you will. What would that era of peace, what would that look like when we don't have recurring tragedies in our history, when we can look forward to a future when we can expect peace and loving kindness among all people. So even though we are going to be entering a sad holiday starting tomorrow night, that doesn't mean we can't look forward to having the hope that we can build something together, build something better and brighter for the future. And sometimes these repetitions, the repetitions of the tragic events that even occur in our history, give us something to look forward to build off of. So I think there's a lot of beauty in the value of repetition that we have for this book of Devarim. And I hope that you'll have a moment to study some of that with me at our service tomorrow night, or even on your own, and look into the value of these repetitions that we learn something from. Because we learn something from repetition through the whole Torah. We read it's the same Torah every time we read it, but it's not the same us each time we read it. So we have the opportunity to learn and to grow, and I think that's a really beautiful value to learn from this week's parasha. We're going to continue now in our service with a beautiful nighttime prayer, Hashkivenu, which you'll find on page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. I'd like to invite you to please rise for Hatafila, for our the central part of our prayer service tonight, for the Amidah, on page 164. And I'd like to invite you to open the ark. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol, Ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו ואהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה, רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר עצורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידל מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. If you have not yet concluded your personal Amidah, please feel free to continue doing so. If you have, you're invited to please be seated. As we pray together on page 178, Yihu L'Ratzon. Yihu L'Ratzon Imrei fi V'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri v'goali Yihu L'Ratzon Imrei fi V'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri v'goali Yihu L'Ratzon Imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali Yihu L'Ratzon Imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri v'goali tzuri v'goali. Of course, it is our custom to take an opportunity here to pray a Mishaberach, a prayer of healing to all of those we know who could use it. Feel free to look at the list, the Mishaberach list, and please join me on page 371 as we pray for those we know and love, for our community, for our whole world, for healing. Mishaberach Avoteinu Mekor habracha Leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. I want to take this opportunity, if you feel free, if you feel like saying the person's name out loud, anyone you're thinking of and wishing healing to, and we'll give the opportunity to go around the room if you'd like to name their names out loud. And if you're watching at home on the stream, please feel free to add their names out loud as well. And of course, our Mishaberach prayer goes out to all of those members, family members, friends, and co-workers who are on our Mishaberach list. Please join me together again on that second verse. Mishaberach Imoteinu Mekor habracha La'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of Spirit, and let us say, Amen. We wish them a refuah shlema, a full healing in every way that is imaginable for them. Amen. And of course, while we're gathered here, we like to say Kaddish. We'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the names of those connected to our community who we are currently saying Kaddish for. Tonight, our Kaddish prayer goes to Nancy Lord, to the victims of the Florida tragedy, to Barbara Bolter, Sandra Gainan, Charlotte Hellman, Sylvia Miller, Karen Ness, Fred Michaels, Linda Luna, Dr. C. Harold Cohn, Barbara Abraham, Ernestine Erkin, Earl Sanders, Larry Moskowitz, Rebecca Kaufman, Howard Schwartz, and we also say Kaddish tonight for the yard sites of Norman Hindley, Herman Glazer, Richard Sears, Jose Gonzalez, Edward L. Key, Joel Kleinberg, Nicole Lipkin, Jeff Lowenthal, Joyce Nancy Silverstein, Bonnie Kruchkoff, Rose Lewis, Minnie Manison, William Devitz, Pearl Marias, Jack M. Bayless, and if anyone else would like to add someone's name that they're saying Kaddish for tonight, please feel free to do so. It is our custom to rise in solidarity of those who are in mourning. If you'd like to rise, I invite you to do so. Please join me on page 598 for our Kaddish prayer. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehe shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam ul'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal, shmei dekudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehe shlama Rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, Amen. You may be seated. And of course, we like to conclude our Kaddish prayer with Oseh Shalom. If you'll please join me on the same page. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, Amen. this time in our service, we'd like to call on, are you doing the announcements? So we'd like to call on our president. Take it away, Steve.
All right, thank you. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you, Cantor. I'm going to use part of the Cantor's Drash. I'm going to repeat and repeat. Okay, so coming up tomorrow at 10:30 is Minyan and Torah study on Zoom. Tomorrow morning, 10:30, Minyan and Torah study. And tomorrow night at 8 p.m. on Zoom, Havdalah and Tish B'Av with Cantor Alyssa. You'll find the Zoom links and details about more in our weekly TSG email blast. Tonight's flowers are presented by Lori Kleinberg for the yard side of her husband, Joel. At the conclusion of the service, everyone is invited to join the Oneg, hosted this week by Sisterhood. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Tell you what, we'll do one more prayer before closing. Please join me on page 586 for Aleinu. And please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמרנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Thank you. Please be seated. And please join me on page 625 as we sing our closing song for tonight, Adon Olam. And this, many of you may be aware, there are a lot of different melodies that can be used for Adon Olam. This one is one of the classic ones, and you'll catch on pretty easily, so please join me. Adon Olam Hashem Allah B'terem kol yitzir nivra Le'ed na'asa v'chefzo kol Azai melech shmo nikra Azai melech shmo nikra Ve'acharei kichlot hakol לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא אחד
חי גאלי, בצור חבלי בעת צרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, בידו אקיר רוחי, בעת אישן והעירה, ועם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא, אדוני לי ולא אירא.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Aren't you tired? Aren't you ready to sit down?
It's like the lower back starts to hurt, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we're not used to doing the Amidah and going on. We do the,
Like an invitation to be
I'm sorry,
seated and then doing a.
no, we don't